The House will come to order. Please join Representative Pico in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Shebel, please call the roll.
Representatives, Amabile is excused. Bacon. Baisley. Here. Benavides. Burnett. Here. Byrd. Nancy Byrd. Representative Byrd. Oh. Oh, hi. Bockenfeld. Basenecker. Bradfield. Caraveo. Carver. Catlin. Cutter. Cutter is excused. Doherty. Duran. Esgar. Exum. Froelich. Geithner. Gonzalez Gutierrez. Gray. Rep Gray is excused. Hanks is excused. Herod. Holtorf. Hooten. Judah. I think she's excused today too. Kennedy. Kip. Larson. Lindsay. Fontaine. Luck. Representative Luck is excused. Lynch. McCluskey. McCormick. McKean. McLaughlin. Michelson Janae.
Present.
Mullica is excused. Neville. Ortiz. Here. Pelton. Pico. Ransom. Rich. I think Ricks is excused for now. Roberts. Sandridge. Sirota. Snyder. Soper. Oh, I haven't seen Soper. Is excused. Sullivan. Tipper. Titone. Valdez A. Valdez D. Van Beber. Van Winkle. Weissman. Will. Williams.
Here.
Woodrow.
Here.
Woog. Young. And Mr. Speaker. Cutter's here. Judah here. 58 right now.
With 58 present, 7 excused, we have a quorum. Representative Pico.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Journal of Tuesday, February 8th, 2022, be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Representative Pico. Members, you have heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. That was so good. All those opposed, no.
No.
I can tell everyone in the gallery agrees with me. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. I do sometimes wonder what it sounds like remotely when we call that motion. Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have been granted an excused absence from Majority Leader tomorrow, Thursday the 10th.
So approved. Representative Montine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Health and Insurance Committee, we had afternoon committee today in our usual hearing room, 112, downstairs. On the calendar today, we have House Bill 1008, House Bill 1050. We also have 3 sunset reviews, but today we are actually only going to hear 2. The Healthcare Workforce Data Advisory Group and the sunset report for the Board of Optometry. We are going to have to move the acupuncture licensing program sunset review to next Wednesday due to a number of scheduling conflicts just all around. So that will not be on the calendar today. So be there, be square. We'll see you this afternoon. Thanks.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is an announcement about the work of the Judiciary Committee today. At 1:30 or shortly thereafter, depending on the timing of our floor work this morning, we will be in the Old State Library, aka 271, to hear 3 bills: House Bill 1063, House Bill 1082, and House Bill 1089. Depending on how things go this morning, I might come down and make an updated announcement about timing, but regardless, that is the agenda, and we will be in the Old State Library. Thank you.
Representative Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have been approved to be absent on Friday, February 11th.
Very good. Hey, members, let me just keep it down a little bit. It's about as lively as I've heard it, which is a good thing. But just make sure you're paying attention to the vote. Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Transportation Local Government, coolest committee ever, will be in LSB at 1:30 to hear 1046, 1074, and 1002.
Members, keep it down just a little bit. Representative A. Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of Energy and Environment, we will not be meeting today. We will resume our exciting schedule tomorrow. No Energy and Environment.
Representative Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, it's Wednesday and it is not finance, but I just wanted to give you a heads up for anybody who wants to follow Thursday's finance calendar. Upon adjournment, tomorrow we will be hearing House Bill 1117 and 1083 for action only, and House Bill 1010. So members of finance, if you want to read ahead and revisit those other bills, you have the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Any other further announcements and introductions? Representative Montine and Representative Herod.
Good morning, members. Just a reminder, we got these on our desk today to remind you all that we do have a donation drive going on for diapers, adult diapers, and period products, which we have an example of here on the speaker's well. You can bring them to my office. I'm going to be storing them. My aide now knows that we're going to be storing them. Representative Herod, take it on.
Representative Herod.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I also would like to let you know that the Speaker has approved period product bingo for us tomorrow. And so you will be seeing bingo cards specifically with trivia questions on period products. Mr. Speaker, would you like to try out a trivia question?
Maybe not today. Maybe.
All right, and if you decline the trivia question, we do ask that you respectfully bring in some products for the drive. Period products, also diapers, adult, and for the young ones. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much. Don't forget the box and the well. Representative Putin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I will forecast the winner of the diaper portion of bingo tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to announce to the chamber that I have received permission from the majority leader to be absent on Friday. Thank you.
So approved. See no further announcements or introductions. The next order of business is third reading of bills. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of House Bill 1040.
House Bill 1040 by Representatives Rich and Hooton, also Senators Story and Holbert, concerning the right of unit owners in common interest communities to have reasonable access to common elements of such communities.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1040 on third reading, final passage.
The question is the adoption of House Bill 1040 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. For those participating remotely, Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Baisley, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Baisley votes no. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Hanks votes no. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Burnett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Burnett votes yes. Representative Michelson-Jeannet, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Michelson-Jeannet votes yes. Representative Woodrow, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Woodrow votes yes. Okay. Who's gonna be the chamber auctioneer? Is that my job? You could? All right. Let's Representative Tipper is excused with a $7 fine. If she would have made it, all right, $10 fine. That's fine. That's fair, because that's what I did to Representative Baisley yesterday. Machine's closed. $10 fine for Representative Tipper. With 41 aye votes, 20 no votes, and 4 excused, House Bill 1040 is adopted. Co-sponsors. You have the opportunity to co-sponsor Representative Tipper. There are suggestions on turning fines into like candy too, but remember the fines go towards the staff party at the end of session, and candy and other items like that are sort of harder. Yeah, they're harder to use at the party. All right, please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please. I just did that. Mr. Shebel, please read the title of House Bill 1102. That's fine.
House Bill 1102 by Representatives Ortiz and Sullivan, also Senator Gardner, concerning protected classes and fair housing practices and in connection therewith, including a veteran or military status as a protected class.
Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 1102 on third reading, final passage.
The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1102 on third reading and final passage. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Baisley, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Baisley votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Hanks votes no. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Burnett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Burnett votes yes. Representative Michelson-Jeannet, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Michelson-Jeannet votes yes. Representative Woodrow, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Woodrow votes yes. Please close the machine. With 50 aye votes, 12 no votes, and 3 excused, House Bill 1102 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Oh yeah, Representative Michelson Janae, co-sponsor. Representative Woodrow, co-sponsor. Representative Burnett, co-sponsor. Thank you, Carl.
Woodrow and who else?
Please close the machine. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for immediate consideration of Senate amendments to House bills, resolutions.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for immediate consideration of Senate amendments to House resolutions. Mr. Shebel, please read the title, House Joint Resolution 1012.
House Joint Resolution 1012 by Representatives Snyder and Lynch, also Senators Garcia and Heisey, concerning reaffirming Colorado to be the permanent location of the United States Space Command and in connection therewith, urging the Department of Defense to keep the United States Space Command in Colorado.
Representative Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We move that the House concur with Senate amendments to House Joint Resolution 1012.
Would you like to explain? Representative Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So not a major change here, just some wording. Now, we can read through the entire resolution if anybody would like.
I object.
But instead, I can also just tell you the changes. So page 2, line 20, we just added the word space. It says United States Space Force bases in Buckley. Line 21, we added United States Space Force Station Cheyenne Mountain. Line 23, we added Space Delta 4 at Buckley Space Force Base. Those are the only changes, and they're minor typo stuff. Please vote yes.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before us is to concur with Senate amendments to House Joint Resolution 1012. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members, please proceed to vote.
Awesome.
Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Baisley, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Baisley votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hanks votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Burnett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Burnett votes yes. Representative Michelson Janae, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Michelson Janae votes yes. Representative Woodrow, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Woodrow votes yes. Please close the machine. With 63 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 2 excused, the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Joint Resolution 1012 is adopted. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the repassage of SJR 1012 as amended.
The question before us is the repassage of House Bill 1012, House Joint Resolution 1012 as amended. I don't think we can voice vote this. So, Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members, please proceed to vote. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Baisley, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Baisley votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hanks votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Burnett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Burnett votes yes. Representative Michelson Janae, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Michelson Janae votes yes. Representative Woodrow, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Woodrow votes yes. Representative McLaughlin, please close the machine. With 62 aye votes, 1 no vote, and 2 excused, House Joint Resolution 1012 is repassed as amended. Co-sponsors. There were before, but we did amend it. Representative Burnett, Ortiz, Baisley, Woodrow, co-sponsor. I guess everyone already is co-sponsors. If you'd like to remove your name, come on down. Okay, please No reason to open, yeah, it's kind of a weird motion. I don't know if I've ever seen a Senate amendment to a House joint resolution before, but there's a first time for everything. With that, Majority Leader Escar. I guess that brings us back to Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to lay over general orders second reading of bills till tomorrow, February 10th. Do you want me to do it all? Huh? All general orders, I'm going to do special orders. All the general orders, 3 bills.
Seeing no objection, the general orders calendar for today, Wednesday, February 9th, will be laid over one day until Thursday, February 10th. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the following bills be made special orders at 9:25 a.m. I'm going to read through these, but don't rush about writing them down. We'll have an order calendar up here for you all in a moment. Here we go. House Bill 1170, 1171, 1172, 1173, 1174, 1194, 1195, 1196, 1197, 1175, 1176, 1177, 1192, 1193, 1178, 1179, 1180, 1181, 1182, 1183, 1186, 1187, 1188, 1189, 1190, 1191, 1184, and 1185.
The following bills listed by the Majority Leader will be made special orders at 9:25 on February 9th. Representative Exum.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House now resolve itself to committee of the whole for consideration of special orders.
Seeing no objection, Representative Exum will take the chair for consideration of special orders.
You ready? Sit on. The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there's a request of reading the bill at length. Committee reports are printed in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen, and on your iPads, bills will be laid over by the motion of the Majority Leader, and the court rule is relaxed. Mr. Shebo, please read the title to House Bill 221170.
House Bill 1170 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Corrections.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you, too.
I move House Bill 1170 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, 1170 is the first of our supplemental appropriation bills for the Department of Corrections. Primarily in corrections, you will see adjustments because of caseload, both medical caseload and prison caseload. I encourage an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1170. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. 1170 is adopted. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1171.
House Bill 1171 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Education.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is the supplemental for the Department of Education. It includes funding for our Colorado School for the Deaf and Blind, a
Representative
utility...
McCluskey, please move the bill first.
I've jumped.
That's okay.
Forgive me. I move House Bill 1171 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Majority Leader Escar. I will get used to this today. Members, this is the Department of Education supplemental. It includes an increase in funding for the Colorado School of the Deaf and Blind for utility rate increases. It also includes the movement of some dollars that we assigned last year through the School Finance Act for the Career Success Development Program, as well as concurrent enrollment. We are providing additional time for our school districts to use these funds, and also recategorizing the CSDP funding to general fund instead of ARPA dollars, since we use those dollars in a reimbursement mode, which is not included in the Treasury guidance for ARPA dollars. I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1171? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1171. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. House Bill 1171 is adopted. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1172.
House Bill 1172 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the offices of the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and State Planning and Budgeting.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1172 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is our supplemental appropriations bill for the Office of the Governor. It includes additional funding for our Office of Boards and Commissions because of our increased need and desire to promote diversity in many of these appointments and the additional time that we need. It also includes $25,000 that was inadvertently removed in the Senate, of all places, for our Veterans Hiring Preference Bill. And it also includes an extension of funding around our broadband deployment. I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1172? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1172 on second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's exciting. All opposed say no.
No.
House Bill 1172 is adopted. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1173.
House Bill 1173 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1173 on second reading.
Thank you. To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is our supplemental bill for healthcare policy and financing. It does include 13 supplemental requests. Roughly 5 of these are related to caseload, Medicaid eligibility, behavior and mental health services, child health, our child health insurance plan, CHP Plus, and the Office of Community Living. It also includes spending authority for the increased FMAP that we are receiving, specifically targeting home and community-based services. As we know, our home and community-based providers have been deeply impacted by the pandemic. These additional dollars are allowing us to put together a very robust and innovative plan over the next 3 years to enhance and expand and strengthen these services provided to Coloradans who are in need, who are in their homes. Some of the targeted use of these dollars will include strengthening our workforce, expanding emergency and crisis services, improving access, particularly in rural and underserved communities, to HCBS services, and the purchase of tools and technology to help us be more efficient and effective with the delivery of these services. I encourage an aye vote.
Any further discussion? Yes, Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We heard this bill in appropriations yesterday, and when we were looking at various bills and they were adding FTEs for one-time funding, a lot of those bills said that they were term limited. But in this bill, 1173, the 53 additional FTEs that are being hired for one-time funding, it is not listed that they are term limited or temporary positions. I move Amendment J001 and ask that it be displayed.
That is a proper motion. We'll wait for it to be displayed. That's okay. The amendment is now displayed. To the amendment, Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're asking for a change on page 37 of the bill where it just locks it in and makes it clear that these temporary positions are temporary and term limited for this one-time funding. I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Rich, I certainly appreciate the focus on extended FTE, given that these are one-time dollars through ARPA, specifically designed for a 3-year plan. The positions really are designed for the plan as it's currently crafted, all in a one-time fashion. I would hate to put a limitation on the consideration that these positions continue. I think all of us value what is the dire crisis for home and community-based services right now, whether it's recruiting and retaining workforce or the delivery of these services by qualified personnel. And certainly in 3 years, if we were able to continue some of these innovative and strategic new practices, I think the state would want that option. So I think limiting ourselves at this moment based simply on the fact that it is a 3-year plan would just be short-sighted, and I would encourage a no vote on this amendment.
Thank you. Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would remind my colleague that yesterday when I asked if these were temporary positions, she said they were. Now, in 3 years, we can certainly change the law if they are going to be permanent, but in other bills that we're looking at today that are supplemental, they are referenced as temporary or term limited. I don't see the harm in putting that in this bill as well to be consistent, that this is one-time funding and that they should be temporary. I ask for an aye vote.
Further discussion? Yes, Representative Hotorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, esteemed colleagues, members of the JBC. There is a significant concern as we move forward with the supplemental budget and the state budget for the next fiscal year, that government is going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And the burdens of the taxpayers are going to be leveraged to help that growth continue. This particular amendment specifically says that this is a temporary allocation, just as many others have been pointed out by the amendment sponsor. This is, to me, very clear, very logical, and very acceptable. So I strongly support this amendment because I will tell you, the constituents in House District 64 most of them believe state government is big enough. The population of this state hasn't grown by maybe 1.5%, 2%. Go ahead for the statisticians out there, run the numbers in 1 year. Yet we're going to grow FTE for these temporary dollars, these temporary federal dollars. After that temporary federal money goes away, what then, Colorado? What then, JBC? What then, bill sponsors? What then? Well, my colleague here from Mesa County has said, let's just say they're temporary. Follow that intent. But we all know, for the folks that'll be here in 3 years, and many of us will not, we know the turnover in this chamber is pretty high. Many of us will not be here. Many of us for the decisions we make this session. But I will tell you that if it's going to be temporary, call it temporary. It's a simple amendment. It makes sense, and I support my colleague from Mesa County wholeheartedly. Vote yes on this good amendment.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes, Assistant Minority Leader Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members. I rise in support of the amendment too, and I thank Representative Rich for bringing it forward. You know, I would remind the sponsors of 1173 that, you know, nothing stops this body from next year or the year following, if these positions are needed, to bring forth legislation. I think the intent here with the one-time dollars is that it is temporary. This spells it out, and Representative Rich did a great job in terms of bringing this amendment forward. And so, again, I would just remind the sponsors, if you need this type of FTE permanent, bring forward legislation in future legislative sessions here in this body, and let the body weigh in on that. Let's not determine what things are in years beyond this year with this one-time spending. So I rise in support of this amendment and urge a yes vote.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Amendment J001? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment J001. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. J001 is lost. And we are back to the bill. Any further discussion on 1173? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1173. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no.
No.
House Bill 1173 is adopted.
There's vigor among our
I'm going to write it down. Sorry, Ms. Sheba. I'll find it. Mr. Sheba, please read the title to House Bill 1174.
House Bill 1174 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Higher Education.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1174 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, the 1174 is our supplemental appropriations bill for the Department of Higher Education. As many of you know, History Colorado falls under the purview of the Department of Higher Education, and it has been a rough couple of years for many of our museums and efforts that really help us preserve the tradition and rich history of Colorado. History Colorado has seen an increase in the limited gaming funding, and by approving this supplemental for them, they'll be able to invest over $2 million in the preservation and upkeep of many of those projects. Additionally, we are rolling forward dollars for the CORE initiative, an initiative that would help Coloradans who dropped out of four-year institutions of higher education when they were very close to earning their degree and certainly had enough credits for an associate's degree, they would now be able to earn that associate's degree based on their accomplishments at that institution. That program, just again because of the volume of work and the challenges that our institutions have faced during the pandemic, has been a little bit slower than anticipated. This Roll Forward Authority will help them get that program off the ground. And finally, in closing a tuition window at Metropolitan State University at Denver, we have to adjust the footnote to account for an increased amount of tuition that that institution received. I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1174? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1174. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. House Bill 1174 is adopted. Mr. Shi, will please read the title to House Bill 1194.
House Bill 1194 by Representatives McCluskey and Ransom, also Senators Hansen and Rankin, concerning local firefighter safety resources provided through the Local Firefighter Safety and Disease Prevention Fund.
Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1194 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill would put $5 million into local firefighter safety resources. You may know that there are fire departments throughout the state of Colorado that are small. Some of them are rural. Some of them are run completely by volunteers. They are lacking some equipment. They are lacking some personal safety equipment that they need. And so we are putting $5 million into a fund to be distributed to those local firefighters.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I am really proud to be carrying this piece of legislation with Representative Ransom today. We have seen to devastating and alarming impacts what wildfire is doing in this state. The Marshall Fire being the most recent example, but certainly we've seen fires, the East Troublesome, the Cameron Peak, in my hometown, the Ptarmigan Fire. And many of our smaller communities operate a firefighting agency on a shoestring. They are dependent on volunteer firefighters. They have very little funding to help support the equipment needs of those individuals and of those agencies. Just this summer, I met with local firefighters from the Western Slope, many of whom are using personal protective equipment that is duct taped together, trying to keep those coats and jackets, those other components, the self-contained breathing apparatus, even when they are well beyond their most useful and effective use. So, having said that, this $5 million being deployed now can get into the hands of our volunteer firefighting departments quickly. We can get that personal protective equipment out to all of them in advance of what we know will be another serious wildfire season, and one that may come much earlier. I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1194? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1194 on second reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. House Bill 1194 is adopted. Mr. Shi, will please read the title to House Bill 1195.
House Bill 1195 by Representatives Harrod and Ransom, also Senator Hansen, concerning transfers from the general fund to the capital construction fund.
Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1195.
To the bill. Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is our yearly bill that you will see each year in supplementals if there are any capital construction requests that have been approved. We will actually have a bill, it's a little bit farther down the list, that will appropriate the money, but this is the transfer bill to just transfer money into the capital construction fund. You'll see that there are two items that are listed and two groups that are going to be getting the money, and They have both been approved by the Capital Development Committee and by the Joint Budget Committee. I ask for your support.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1195? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1195. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. House Bill 1195 is adopted. Mr. Sheba, please read the title to House Bill 1196.
House Bill 1196 by Representatives Harrod and Esgar, also Senators Moreno and Pedersen, concerning a study to evaluate pay equity across all state departments and in connection therewith, making an appropriation.
Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1196.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill creates a pay equity study. It's a part of the first ever agreement between Colorado Winds and the Governor's Office. I ask for an aye vote.
Hold on, Representative Harrod. There's an appropriations report. Please
Move the appropriations report.
to the appropriations report.
The appropriations report made some technical small changes to language. I do ask, without changing the appropriations, I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussions on the appropriations report to House Bill 1196? Seeing none, the question before us is adoption of the appropriations report. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say no. Appropriation report is adopted. Now we're back to the bill.
I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1196 on second reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. No. House Bill 1196 is adopted. Mr. Sheba, please read the title to House Bill 1197.
House Bill 1197 by Representatives McCluskey and Sirota, also Senators Moreno and Buckner, concerning the effective date of the Department of Early Childhood and in connection therewith, transferring money from the general fund to the Capital Construction Fund Information Technology Capital Account and making an appropriation.
Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 22-1197 and the committee report.
To the appropriations report.
This just added a bill number to the bill, and I ask for your support.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the appropriations report to House Bill 1197? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of appropriations report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. No. The appropriation report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a really important bill so that we're moving up the effective date of the Department of Early Childhood to enable the hiring of 6 key positions so that they can provide some accountability to the process we are undertaking to stand up our new Department of Early Childhood and our voter-approved universal pre-K program. It also provides an appropriation for data systems to ensure that we are making the process of applying and conducting the new universal pre-K program more user-friendly for our families and our providers. And I ask for your support.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we know, the voters passed Proposition EE with strong support for a universal preschool program in this state. And over the course of the last year, as we as a body came together to decide how we were going to move that effort forward, the plans for a Department of Early Childhood formed, and I think in a very responsible and thoughtful way. The challenge of standing up a new department is not something that this body has faced or has experienced in doing, and I think this delay, by moving the effective date of the department up, we create more transparency in our budgeting process, in our staffing process. It will be easier for the public to see our progress in how this department is coming together and what dollars we are spending, both to cover the personnel expenses, but also in establishing programs. The $3.5 million for the IT infrastructure is critical. We need to begin that work now to be ready to enroll children and families in universal preschool when we arrive at that very magical date in the near future. I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1197? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1197. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
No.
House Bill 1197 is passed. For the kids. Mr. Shebo, please read the title to House Bill 1175.
House Bill 1175 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Human Services.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1175 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is our supplemental appropriations bill for the Department of Human Services. Included is additional funding for our county administrators who help deliver the SNAP program in their communities, additional spending authority for both Title IV-E funds as well as legal representation of those funds. And then last year, we received CCDF funding, that's Child Care Development Funds, through the ARPA legislation. Those dollars were assigned to a variety of different efforts in child care in the state. The supplemental appropriations bill simply allows some additional time and extensions on the use of that funding, still within Treasury guidance, but focused in the areas where we need it to both build child care capacity and strengthen quality. I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1175? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1175. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. House Bill 1175 is passed. Mr. Shebo, please read the title to House Bill 1176.
House Bill 1176 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Judicial Department. Ooh.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1176 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is our supplemental appropriations bill for the Judicial Department, specifically approval of funding for $9 million for our courts and probation department, specifically to help promote remote proceedings for our courts across the state, funding for courthouse maintenance, an adjustment to how we are currently conducting purchasing and contract procurement, additional funding for the VAIL program, Victims and Witnesses Assistant and Law Enforcement Fund. I urge an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1176? Yes, Representative Benavides. Sorry.
You're close. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I just wanted to speak on this bill. I'm not bringing any amendment or anything, but I was really concerned about the supplemental for the $9,073,128 for infrastructure upgrades, because I didn't understand how this met supplemental criteria. And I did ask our JBC board members and or committee members, not board, JBC committee members. And, you know, JBC has a lot on their plate because they have our regular budget, and then they have all kinds of these federal dollars coming in, which sort of, our budget is much more than it is in normal years. And these are federal dollars, as the bill talks about on page 30, that this was money received from the federal coronavirus state fiscal recovery fund, and it remains available till June 23. And apparently this was a 3-year proposal. The $9 million they had already started spending was for this first year, and then they came to us and they apparently apologized. But members, this is really gets to the core of what we do here, as far as our, if you will, our superpower is the appropriation of funds. And this came up when the CARES Act money came up, and we allowed this to bypass JBC. And there was rightful indignation about that process, and I agree with that this should have gone through the appropriation process. This didn't, and they got it through in the supplemental process. These monies have to be spent, and I don't know the exact reason, but I'm certain that's the reason. But I just wanted to point out that this is not This is somewhat of an affront to us in the legislature, and while I'm not going to oppose it, I just wanted to call it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem Benavides. Any further discussion on House Bill 1176? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1176 on second reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. House Bill 1176 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1177.
House Bill 1177 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Natural Resources.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1177 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is the supplemental appropriations bill for the Department of Natural Resources, and pleased to say that these funds will help us stand up and open our 43rd state park, Sweetwater Lake, in Garfield County. It will allow access and the creation of a park management plan, allow access for Coloradans to start enjoying the park, and we need the funding now to make sure we're ready to go this spring. I encourage an aye vote.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1177? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1177 on second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. House Bill 11, thank you. House Bill 1177 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1192.
House Bill 1192 by Representatives Harrod and McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning the Colorado Opportunity Scholarship Initiative's Displaced Worker Grant and in connection therewith, codifying the grant and extending a related existing appropriation.
Thank you. Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1192.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill includes an appropriation that reduces the Appropriations Department of Higher Education in the cash funds from the Workers, Employees, and Workforce Centers Cash Fund. I do ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative McCluskey, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Displaced Workers Grant Program, particularly for us in the High Country, is proving to be a great way to help workers who may have lost jobs during the pandemic return to the workforce with new skills. So our partners in higher education are helping support workers who may not have earned a post-secondary credential, may not have experienced the kind of skills and training that they need to start down a new career path. This program really will be an essential tool in that toolkit in building and strengthening the workforce, making sure we're getting more people back to work, and I urge an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1192? I'm sorry, 1190. Yes, 1192. The question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1192 on second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. House Bill 1192 is adopted.
Are we not doing the next one? Are we doing the next one? No?
Mr. Shebel. Yes. Madam Assistant Majority Leader Gonzalez Gutierrez. Keep going? Okay. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1193.
House Bill 1193 by Representatives Harrod and McCluskey, also Senators Hansen and Rankin, concerning adjustments to expenditures from funds dedicated to assisting those impacted by the transition to a clean energy economy and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1193.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 1193 is for the Just Transitions Program that this chamber has spoken at length about. It does move $2 million, transfers $2 million from the Coal Transition Workforce Assistance Program. I do ask for an aye vote.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm really pleased that we brought an additional $15 million to this office, particularly for those workers who are moving from the slow decline in our coal industry into new and important workforce paths. The funding really, we're moving the funding to try and support the transition of these workers. We're not yet at a place where these workers have been displaced or are out of a job. We want to make sure the funding is available down the road for them. And so we're putting workers first by making this small adjustment in the use of the funding in the office. I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Further discussion, Representative Hotorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, esteemed colleagues. I commend the intent of this supplemental bill that talks about providing more money to displaced coal miners. But I will tell you, internationally, the coal business is thriving. Exports are at an all-time high for coal, and Colorado coal is some of the cleanest coal in the world. Because of public policy, because of intent by the highest leaders in the state government, because of rules and regulations forcing the coal mines to shut down, not by their own choice, but shutting them down, we have taken away an enormously important, valuable resource. And now we're sitting here saying, oh my, we need to provide more money to the people that we unemployed through our own public policy. Now, I want it said for the record that Colorado coal is a great resource, not only for Colorado, not only for this nation, for the entire world. And it's proven by free economic forces that are proving that out. And we export coal out of many coal mines, including one in my district, to China, to Europe, to international destinations. So I have a big problem sitting here listening about how coal is in demise, demand for coal is plummeting, and these poor workers have to find a new job. Because if we didn't have the kind of public policy we have, they wouldn't need a new job. They would be working in those coal mines, and those communities would not be suffering, and we would not have to fund just transition coal workers programs. In fact, they would be funding so many things for Colorado that our surplus would even be greater. Members of this House chamber, colleagues, so let's understand what we're doing here and why it has to be done. It's not the plight of coal. It's not the plight of the poor coal miners who have to pack up and find a new job because they don't have a job, with one exception. The plight is the public policy that is leading them to be unemployed. For those coal miners out there in Colorado, including in my district, stand strong. Stand for what you believe in and what your profession is. And we will try, those like me will try to protect your jobs and protect your industry so you are not looking for just transition coal workforce programs so you can get money to survive from the government.
Thank you. Minority Leader McKee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I think this one's about families, and I think that that we have hashed this out in this chamber, but I think when we see supplementals moving money around, one of the signs that we see when we look at that is that not only is the intent of the legislation having to be fulfilled either in larger or less ways, but what we're now doing is moving money around to find people new jobs. If I am a citizen of Craig, Colorado, and I work at Trapper Coal Mine, please don't find me a new job. I have a really good job. I have a really good job that provides for my family, provides for my community, that pays me a wage that lets me do better maybe than my parents did. Please don't come and find me a new job especially when what we're doing is moving money around. I get that. I get that what we're trying to do is make sure that some of these programs work. But when we do that, we are actually talking at the core about the discussion we've had in this chamber for years, about vilifying an industry and then determining that we will, as government, do a better job in figuring out the future for these communities. When we got rid last year of the severance tax credit and rolling it out over, or deleting it over 6 years, I said something important that I want to say again today. We gave Craig, Colorado 6 years to live. We passed a death sentence on a town. And to me, that's where we go with moving these dollars around now is, okay, how are we best going to carry that sentence out? And how are we best going to do the things we need to do? I love seeing that there are things in this that we probably can agree. $150,000 going to the Carbon Ore, Rare Earth, and Critical Materials Initiative at the Colorado School of Mines, a remarkable institution of higher education. But guess where those minerals and what that research does? It does a better job in making steel in Pueblo. It does a better job at finding the rare minerals that we need in this state, like cadmium, like cobalt, like all of the things that we need for the electric vehicles we hear so much about. So when we move these dollars around, we're really saying we need to do a better job of how we carry that out. Fundamental to that discussion was what we set in place before.
Thank you. Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, we had our opportunity last year on a bipartisan bill to actually invest a lot of money into these communities. And that's what we did. It was one-time money that we were able to invest into these communities that are really trying to figure out for themselves what their future is. Over the interim, I don't know if it's because my name was on the original bill, I was inundated by emails from folks in these communities that needed help sooner. That's what the supplemental is. If you look at the bill sponsors on the supplemental, one of them is actually from those communities of people that emailed us and said, actually, we hear this plan, but this is what our immediate need is. So if we're moving money around, we're moving money around to be responsive to the needs of the community and the folks in that community who are asking for the help today, not a few years down the road. So that's what this supplemental does. That's why I'm in support of it, and I'd ask you all to vote yes.
Thank you. Representative Will.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
Honor to serve with you too, sir.
I'm not going to come up and debate this. Actually, Majority Leader and I were on this bill for $15 million for just transition. A lot of it's already been said. Policy that come out of this building is the reason we're in trouble with our coal communities over there, coal communities across Colorado. Representative Catlin's area already been heavily impacted prior to this, but my communities in Meeker and Rangeley and Craig have really been impacted. We talk about just transition. When I first came here, I think it was House Bill 1314 that caused all of this. And it's real people. These communities are really suffering. Some of the local officials in these communities are scared. Employees are scared. Workers are scared. So 15 million is just a drop in the bucket. I mean, a drop in the bucket. We need hundreds of millions of dollars to help these communities because of policy that have come out of this chamber right here. So I support this. I supported the $15 million, and I'll support hundreds of millions of dollars for just transition to help my communities, and we need more money for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Will. Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1193? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1193 on second reading. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say no. House Bill 1193 is adopted. Mr. Shield, please read the title to House Bill 1178.
House Bill 1178 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Personnel.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1178 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is the supplemental appropriations bill for the Department of Personnel. It includes the truing up of our fleet of vehicles, due in part to increasing fuel and maintenance costs. It includes an increase for our integrated document solutions, the inflationary pressures, costs of printing materials, as well as the increased printing volumes that we are doing here in the state, required an increase in funding. And then we also have additional funding for the additional needs we have in human resources for the personnel that the state has hired during the pandemic. I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1178? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1178 on second reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. House Bill 1178 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1179.
House Bill 1179 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Public Health and Environment.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1179 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 1179 is our supplemental appropriations bill for the Department of Public Health and Environment. Most notably included in this bill is a correction. We inaccurately represented the $14.5 million in Senate Bill 21243 last year as a part of the appropriations clause. It is a correction of that. It also provides $4 million in cash funds for our nursing facility grant program. We are required by the federal government to provide 50% of those grant funds in funding to programs in the state, and this will allow us to do that. And we also are continuing the Health E-Moms Survey, a survey that CDPHE conducts with new moms to make sure that we are providing the kinds of services and care we need to promote healthy families in the state. I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1179? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1179 on second reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. House Bill 1179 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1180.
House Bill 1180 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of Public Safety.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1180 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you. Members, this is the supplemental appropriations bill for the Department of Public Safety. You will note there is an increase in general fund for the Capitol Complex security. Our CSP, our troopers who do such an amazing job here on the grounds protecting the Capitol Complex, simply are working overtime round the clock to make sure that we are all safe. Pleased to see that additional funding head their way. We also did a communications officer base salary increase. There has been it's been a very challenging moment for recruiting and retaining communications workers, our dispatch workers who handle those incoming calls for emergencies for our troopers. So pleased to do that in this moment as well. There are additional items included in this bill, including funding for the online sex offender provider management system, Global Energy Park funding, and an extension of ARPA funding for victim services. I urge an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Madam Speaker Pro Tem Benavides.
Thank you, members. You have an amendment on your desk, and I'm not going to bring this amendment, but I am going to speak to it because this proposal was the online sex offender provider management system. It was $200,000 spending authority is what the supplemental was. And I had asked a question about this because normally these things should be requested in advance, and if it's OIT or technology related, it should go through our joint technology committee. So as I looked, and what this system is, and some people have said it's to notify victims. This is not about notifying victims. This is about setting up an online complaint system, because when they were audited, when the Sexual Offender Management Board was audited, and you should read that audit. It's a fairly scathing audit of their policies and procedures in the Sexual Offender Management Board. But one of the things they were not keeping up with was the applications from providers and complaints against providers. So this proposal was to make that part of their online sex offender provider management system. And they were audited in 2019, and the results came out in June of 2020. And in that, and they provided, which is shocking to me and that nobody read it, in January of this year, they provided responses to JBC questions that indicated the audit told them to do this. Honestly, I read the audit, and the audit did not say that. The audit was a performance review audit that included looking at their systems with regard to transparency and data. And what they found is the money that comes into the surcharge fund, it comes from sexual offenders who have to pay into that fund. It's a cash fund that's used by 4 entities, including the Sexual Offender Management Board. And it has to go through a process with the various departments involved. And so they have excess in that fund. So what the audit said is you need better processes in place, but they said, even in the audit, one quote was, recipient agencies are reluctant to request increased spending authority from the General Assembly. So they knew they had to do this. And I talked with the legislative liaison from Public Safety, and he said, oh yeah, we went to OSPB, and for those of you who don't know, it's the Office of State Planning and Budget, which is within the governor's office, that state departments are supposed to go to them. They're sort of the gatekeeper to approve supplementals, to approve regular budget requests and budgets overall for the executive branch. Well, they had missed the deadline. So this came very late, November 19th, 2021, and on January 6th, they were still answering questions to the JBC because they were already spending this money and they had no spending authority to spend it. But they felt, well, it's in the fund, so we should be able to spend it. And members, I really need to talk about 2 issues here, and 3, and let me start with, I know that the Joint Budget Committee is overwhelmed with all of this at this time of year, and these things go through, it seems to make sense, and we let it through. They did raise questions, and some of the responses in a couple of hours of searching I found were flat out misstatements, because the audit never directed them to go to the JBC directly to seek this money, and they never directly said to seek money for this particular project, as they seem to indicate in their responses to JBC. So I don't fault the JBC and their analysts who are somewhat overwhelmed, but again, this goes to budget integrity. The reason we have these things in place and we want them done on a timely manner is so the analysts in JBC can fully evaluate this. The JBC members have the full story in front of them in making these decisions. The second one goes back to separation of powers. Again, members, our responsibility in the legislative branch is to appropriate money. And when agencies are going out and deciding and starting to spend money before they've had an appropriation, that's really thumbing their nose at our authority. And we have rules in place and processes to stop that. This was not an emergency type situation that they had to start that, even waiting another year for that. But on their own, they determined we should, and we should spend this even though we don't have the money. And I am going through this at length because I want you all to understand that they never even went to the Joint Technology Committee. They went directly to OIT, and OIT ranked it and told them, oh, we're ready to do it, so let's spend the money. And that is not the way this process works. And again, the ones that, who can stop them is the legislature. I understand completely why the JBC went ahead and approved it, and they admonished them actually that they need to go through the regular process if you read the documents associated with it. So because it's already being spent, it's $200,000, I'm not going to pursue the amendment. But members, I think this is the second one that I noticed that was done without any kind of authority from the legislature to do this and spend these money. And I just want to make the agencies that are doing this know that this body is keeping track of these things and watching them. So thank you, members.
Thank you, Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank my colleague from Adams County for digging into this issue. What I will say is there was a lot of very factual things that my colleague did report on. There were some process, I think, issues with this supplemental request. However, a couple of things I want to clear up. The department does have the statutory ability to implement this program without additional changes to their statute. Additionally, we do believe that this funding is prudent at this time so that people can be notified through electronic means as opposed to paper means. It's quite simple. But I will acknowledge that my colleague from Adams County was correct in a lot of the process and technical issues. However, JBC staff still did recommend this supplemental to move forward, and we will appreciate your vote to support that at this time.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1180? Yes, Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I were to have a favorite nitpicker, it would be Representative Benavidez, who does go back and dig in and look at these things. And I think that's remarkable. I appreciated her discussion because I think it has to do with what the appropriate spending authority really is. And so I move Amendment J002 to House Bill 1180 and ask for it to be displayed.
Thank you. That amendment has been properly moved and is now displayed to the amendment. Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So, folks, what this does is it takes $120,800 from our general fund and sends it to the Department of Public Safety, which is sort of a precursor to a discussion that we're going to have in a minute over security services for our current Secretary of State. However, because Department of Public Safety supplemental is in one space and second, the Department of State is in another space, we need to do this first, which would say instead of, when we talk about that later, taking cash funds and going and putting that money toward security services, let's make sure that what we actually do is spend it appropriately as a body. So my amendment says let's take $120,800 from our general fund, over which we have final say, and give it to our Department of Public Safety, which is exactly the group that ought to do this. Now, that said, you may hear from a colleague of mine in a minute that Department of Public Safety currently does not have the authority to provide security services. So there would be another statutory change that we ought to make. Because if we're going to live in a world where we need to provide these services, they should come from the right place. I would ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
Any further discussion? Yes, Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and respectfully to the minority leader, I think you got that last part right, which would be to do that, we would need a bill to give them that authority. It is my understanding that those bills are coming this session, and so we'll have a nice, robust debate around security for our constitutional offices. At this time, we do know that there is an immediate need for security, so we do ask for a no vote on this amendment and an aye vote on the bill.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Amendment J002? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment J002 to House Bill 1180. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. No. J002 is lost. Back to the bill. Any further discussion on House Bill 1180? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1180 on second reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no.
No.
Thank you. House Bill 1180 is passed. Mr. Sheba, please read the title to House Bill 1181.
House Bill 1181 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning the supplemental appropriation to the Department of Revenue.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1181 on second reading.
To the bill.
Members, this is the supplemental appropriations bill for the Department of Revenue. This includes funding both for FY21 and 22 on our lottery retailer compensation. There have been a lot more scratch tickets and jackpot tickets sold, and so we do pay a small commission to those retailers who provide those tickets. So that is part of this bill, along with funding for the racing season delay. I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Further discussion on House Bill 1181. Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1181 on second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. House Bill 1181 is passed. Mr. Sheba, please read the title to House Bill 1182.
House Bill 1182 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning a supplemental appropriation to the Department of State.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1182 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the supplemental appropriations bill for the Department of State. Included is additional cash fund spending authority for both security services as well as threat monitoring, and an additional $75,000 in cash funds, net zero impact on the budget, for ballot tracking, which has proven to be such a successful tool for voters to find out where their ballot is in an election process. I encourage an aye vote.
Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you all. So this is the discussion I promised, and I know you're all excited and ready for it because we do that here. This is the request for $120,800. Doesn't seem like a big number, does it? From cash funds to provide security services for a couple months, basically until the budget is finalized and passed and signed into law. I think it's important to understand that because it sounds like a small number, but it represents a much bigger issue. And that issue is, how do we provide security for our constitutional officers? I don't really want to take you down a really long road. I think Representative Weissman may, as often he does, discuss at great length the things that we do and how we do them. But what I will tell you is this. It's sad that we live in a world where we, and I do mean me, get on a routine basis death threats, where we get people who take our debates over policy to a level that we would find unacceptable here among ourselves. And so then we're left with a question of how do we deal with it? And the reason why I want to couch this conversation in the question of how do we deal with that is because it very, very directly goes to what we do with money. What we have here is a request from the Secretary of State to provide private security services under contract to the Secretary of State. Well, that's probably not the best way to do that, is it? Probably the best way to do that would be to make sure that the Secretary of State has available to that office the same kind of security that we all do here. When I get a death threat, a credible death threat, then I get to talk to a state trooper. That state trooper gets to say, I'm going to go check into this, and comes back, says, yay, nay, it's credible, it's not credible, we're talking to the people who sent it, whatever it might be. That is likely the best avenue we can go, because what we really do is aggregate all of those complaints, if you will, all of those threats into one place, so that those people absolutely know what's going on and have their thumb on the pulse of what is happening within the body as a whole, within the legislature, downstairs on the first floor with the executive branch, and our constitutional offices as well. So I would discuss why we're talking about a supplemental, but to do that, I move Amendment J001 to House Bill 1182 and ask that it be displayed. Lightning fast.
Thank you. That amendment has been properly moved and is now displayed to Amendment LJ001.
Thank you,
Minority
Mr. Chair.
King.
So the reason why I think this is important is that the Secretary of State is actually a steward of cash funds, of resources that are there to do a job. And that job is in her department multi-layered, right? We have elections, we have business filings, we have all these different things, but people pay a fee because in Colorado, fees actually mean something. It means you pay a fee that covers the provision of that service, correct? We all agree? So that fee goes into a cash fund. And of that cash fund, there's a certain amount of administrative overhead that is allowed. Because guess what? You're supposed to be paying a fee for the very thing you think you're paying a fee for. And so when we see a supplemental request like this, asking for a more cash fund to be used, that means that level has been exceeded, and now more money is needed to provide for something that we ought to have a discussion about. This $120,800 is for private security, private threat monitoring, when we already have a Department of Public Safety that does exactly the same thing. When we see things that increase the burden on our taxpayers, we should root them out. This increases the burden on our taxpayers. And so, as you heard before, we will need to have a discussion of, do we bring a bill, do we support a bill that provides security services under the Department of Public Safety for all of our constitutional officers? And that's a discussion I'm perfectly willing to have. It does matter how we do that. It does matter that we do it in the best way possible. But this is a different discussion. This says, should we grant the spending authority over these additional dollars out of cash funds? Cash funds that were collected under the auspices of a different purpose. And that was to simply provide the administrative overhead for these functions. I would say that when we see this kind of a request for a few short months, we ought to have a very scant eye toward what we're doing with those dollars and whether or not they have been stewarded well. And I would suggest that in interest of that, you support this amendment. I would ask for an aye vote on Amendment J001.
Thank you. Representative Wiseman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, I'll start by saying where I agree with the comments made by Mr. Minority Leader. It is pretty tragic, actually, that we're having to have this conversation at all. But that's the world that we find ourselves in right now, and we are having to have this conversation. I have become aware over the last year or so of, threats made against people who are candidates for office, who serve in a more local level of elected office, who have resigned, who have desisted from a candidacy because of threats to themselves or their family members. And I don't care what office you're running for, I don't care what party you're in, that is wrong, and that strikes at the core of what we think our representative system is. But that is where we are, and here is essentially a stopgap prophylactic kind of measure, given that brought forth by the people in the Secretary of State for the security of the person who is the head of that office, an elected constitutional officer, and it has come to us from the JBC. So I appreciate the points that were made previously about fund sourcing and making sure that in the supplemental process we try to keep appropriations by the book. That's part of what I heard the Minority Leader saying. But I am here to speak against this amendment and for the bill as introduced. I will try to not go down too long a road, but maybe a road of middle length. Some of us know about the ESU, or the Executive Security Unit in State Patrol. They are charged by statute, 2433.5216, if you want to see, to provide security to the governor. That's been the case since about 1983. Only a few years ago, actually, fewer years than one might think, given what we're used to around here and the privileges that we have as legislators, the ESU was officially charged by statute with the duty of also providing security for Capitol Complex for us as legislators. That's the adjacent statute, 2433.5216.5. As the Minority Leader identified, I think that we are overdue to have a conversation in the current environment about broadening that scope to our other statewide constitutional officers. again, I don't care what party that they are in now or 10 years from now. They deserve to do the jobs that they were elected to without facing threats against themselves and their families. And I think we didn't even think about that. I don't know that we would have dreamed about that kind of thing 5, 10 years ago, but here we are. We budget, and I think this is the key point, we budget to current law. We all know you cannot change the substantive law in the budgeting process. So we do not have that statutory bedrock there. Maybe we will later, this year. And then maybe we'll start talking about what that budgeting looks like. But because we are here now, because I think the threat environment is pretty grave out there in ways that some of us have experienced personally, and in some cases have been spoken about personally here at the mic, I don't want to see a gap. So this may not be what we usually do, and I'm willing to say that I don't think it should be what we continue to do in the long term. But we will have a conversation about that. I believe it is unfortunately necessary and appropriate to do in the short term, and therefore I'm going to rise and urge a no vote on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you for taking us down that middle road, and Representative Hortorf is going to stay on that same road, maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your optimism. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, as we travel down this road, I will tell you that we are beginning to set a very dangerous precedent. Because what does contract security look like? What does threat monitoring look like? Completely undefined in some cases. Can threat monitoring be used outside of its original intent or scope? Does threat monitoring get politicized? As we know, occurs at the federal level, unfortunately. Now, many of you know that I had a personal experience, bothered me for a short period of time. Very short, I will tell you. But when you do get your life threatened, when you do have people saying things that are untrue or trying to make baseless claims that something was said about them or their people that were not true, and then threats do come as a public official, then we get a problem that requires security. I will tell you, in my case, the CSP did a great job of investigating, of determining the origin of the threats, the death threats, and providing protection for a period of time. That's a capacity built in. I know there's some constitutional questions about that with the Secretary of State. But it is not like we do not have capacity in local government. We do not have capacity in sheriff's departments. We do not have capacity in state law enforcement entities. There is already existing capacity that I believe could be leveraged, and perhaps it might take a little statutory remedy. But to go out and hire contract security, what does that contract look like? Where do these people come from? Now, I spent a little time in the military, many of you know this, and we had a little problem in Iraq with Blackwater. Contract security. What are going to be their policies, procedures? What rules do they follow? All of it is undefined, and I guess will be written in contract by the Secretary of State, which in and of itself is a problem, I think, in this time, with this particular appropriation. So I'm in support of this, but really, I'm not in support of any of it. But I'll get to the bill later.
Thank you. Representative Sandridge.
I'll wait for the bill.
Okay. Any further discussion on J001? Yes, Representative Rich.
Well, this is hard. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask all of you to think about this. Private security for a public official, and we're getting it, we are in an election year now, and I don't know how you're going to separate her public appearances as the Secretary of State from her appearances as a candidate. Because some of those get blurred, and she always does a press release and campaigns off of that anytime that she makes an appearance. So should the government be paying for private security when we have the Colorado State Patrol that can protect her?
Thank you. Further discussion on, help me, I got a brain fart. Sorry. Representative Pelton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I rise in full support of this amendment. You know, the Highway Patrol, the Colorado State Patrol does a wonderful job. They provide security for the governor. You know, if that's not good enough for the Secretary of State, then maybe she needs another job. So I think this amendment is very appropriate.
Thank you. Further discussion on Amendment J001. Seeing none, question before us the adoption of Amendment J001. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Amendment J001 is lost. Now we're back to the bill. Further discussion. Yes, Representative Sandridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is an important topic, and I don't take it lightly. We all have been through certain threats. I know I've had some pretty scary conversations with Representative Mullica and some of the threats he's suffered. But just like this bill, just like any bill, I look for ways to cut money. And there's a big way to cut money on this. There's more ways. There's a lot of ways to have security, and we all have security in some ways on different routes from different side of the aisle. I know many of us on this side of the aisle have not asked for hundreds of thousands of dollars or all this money to have people walk with us with guns. Well, I ask that the Secretary of State embrace her Second Amendment rights and become her own security. It'll save us, taxpayer, a lot of money. I'm willing to meet her at the range to help her embrace her Second Amendment rights and become her own security. It's a wise choice. When you're your own security, that means you have security with you 24/7. You don't have to wait for 911, or you don't have to wait to see if somebody standing next to you is playing on their phone, or you're constantly responsible. So I'm willing to help in that way, save the taxpayer some money, and I'm more than happy to meet her at the range. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on House Bill 1182. Yes, Representative Gray. And your helper.
Yes, my helper. This is Torrin. I'll introduce him later. I would ask everybody, this is not the last debate we're going to have about this, but I'd ask everybody to take a moment of pause when we're debating issues relating to our own public safety. Because I will say, as myself, and for many other people in this room who I've talked to, that the issue of personal security and the fear for your life in this job is something that is serious. It is something that can cause trauma. It's something that can cause trauma that lasts for a number of years after it's happened. So I get we're politicians around here. I get it. My personal request to everyone of all persuasions is to, as much as possible, not politicize the idea of our own bodily safety in this building. I support this bill, but more so, I support discourse to understand that those of us who have gone through situations where we have had threats that were deemed credible by outside folks, like, we hear you when you're talking, and we see the difference between the politics and the discussion of actual public safety. And I would just implore everyone to try to veer more towards public safety yes, I know. More towards the public safety than to the other things that we talk about around here, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on House Bill 1182. Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1182 on second reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. No. House Bill 1182 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1183.
House Bill 1183 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning supplemental appropriation to the Department of Treasury.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1183 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is the supplemental appropriations bill for the Department of Treasury. I want to highlight that it does include $3.7 million general fund, which will be combined with $1 million general fund already set aside for property tax loss. In this moment, after the devastation of the Marshall Fire, these dollars will move to support Boulder County during this difficult time, since property has been lost and those tax dollars will not be realized. It also includes dollars for the purchase of an online application and loan processing system due to the passage of Senate Bill 21293, a net zero shift in cash funds for the unclaimed property trust fund staff to be working remotely. I urge an aye vote on 1183.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1183? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1183 on second reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. House Bill 1183 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1186.
House Bill 1186 by Representatives Harridan McCluskey, also Senators Hansen and Moreno, concerning adjustments to school funding for the 2021-22 budget year and in connection therewith, making and reducing an appropriation.
Representative Harridan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1186.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is one of our probably biggest bills of the supplemental package. This is our school finance bill. And as you all know, I'm just going to highlight one point, and then Madam JBC Chair will highlight the rest. But as you all know, it's been really hard to count at-risk students based on free and reduced lunch. Obviously, through the pandemic, folks haven't had to apply for those for free and reduced lunch. Most lunches are being given for free, and so the numbers are pretty off. And so this bill does provide an additional $91.4 million cash funds from the State Education Fund to ensure that we have adequate funding for our at-risk pupil count. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think all of us are well aware of what our schools have been enduring over the past 2 years. Our teachers, our students, our families. It's been a very challenging time to focus on classroom instruction when there have been so many other issues to deal with around public health. I think while every year we have a mid-year school funding supplemental that trues up what we provide to our school districts based on largely student enrollment, it is important during this time that we take a thoughtful and compassionate approach to continuing the funding in the ways that our schools and school districts have expected. Our student pupil count really has remained close to flat. There was not a significant increase or decrease in our funded pupil count for the school funding formula this year. That, coupled with a rising amount of local share, in part due to the mill levy equalization fund passage, and as well, rising property values, we are seeing an increase in the funding coming from local shares. That has allowed us to use this money this year to keep total program funding whole for our districts. As Representative Harrod mentioned, we are investing $91 million outside of the school funding formula to really compensate those districts for the headcount on at-risk students that we have not been able to capture. Free and reduced lunch identification has been our proxy in the school finance formula. It is flawed. It is difficult to use when school lunches are free and people don't need to apply for that support or assistance. And so this is a moment for us to really step up and make the right investments in our schools to support our teachers, our classrooms, and keep that funding as close to whole as we had projected and what we had intended to provide for them this year. With that, I encourage an aye vote.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1186? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1186 on second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. House Bill 1186 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1187.
House Bill 1187 by Representative Harrod, also Senators Hansen and Rankin, concerning extending statutory deadlines for COVID-19 relief programs within the Office of Economic Development.
Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1187.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill extends the statutory deadlines for the disproportionately impacted business programs under Senate Bill 1. I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion on House Bill 1187? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1187 on second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. House Bill 1187 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1188.
House Bill 1188 by Representatives Harrod and McCluskey, also Senators Moreno and Rankin, concerning authorizing money in the ARPA account within the Healthcare Affordability and Sustainability Fee Cash Fund to be used for home and community-based services that are ineligible for a federal match but otherwise authorized pursuant to the Federal American Rescue Plan Act of 2021.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1188 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is a technical change to allow the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing to spend some of the ARPA dollars that are now a part of this home and community-based services spending plan on behavioral health initiatives. I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1188 on second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. House Bill 1188 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1189.
House Bill 1189 by Representatives Harrod and McCluskey, also Senators Moreno and Rankin, concerning the extension of deadlines for training for providers across the state in cross-system behavioral health crisis response as it relates to persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1189.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill allows for deadline extension, specifically so that the department can find a vendor to fulfill the requirements of 21-1166. I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1189 on second reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. House Bill 1189 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1190.
House Bill 1190 by Representatives Harrod and McCluskey, also Senators Hansen and Moreno, concerning supplemental state payment to urban Indian organizations to address healthcare disparities among the urban Indian community and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1190.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 1190 appropriates funds to the Urban Indian Health Association right here in Denver to ensure that our Native population has access to health care, specifically around the pandemic. I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to add that we did focus the language in this bill on healthcare disparities so that the funding really can be used to help close the gap on disparities between our Indian community here in the urban setting. Ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1190 on second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. House Bill 1190 is passed. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1191.
House Bill 1191 by Representatives Harrod and McCluskey, also Senators Moreno and Hawkes Lewis, concerning extending the date by which the Department of Health Care Policy and Financing shall administer the reproductive health care program from January 1st, 2022 to July 1st, 2022.
Representative Harrod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1191.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill extends the statutory deadline imposed by Senate Bill 009 related to reproductive health care. I do ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1191 on second reading. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. No. House Bill 1191 is passed. Mr. Chief, please read the title to House Bill 1184.
House Bill 1184 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning funding for capital construction and making supplemental appropriations in connection therewith.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1184 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is our supplemental appropriation bill for capital construction. Really important to note that capital construction projects last over many years, and so we are making adjustments to budget FY19, FY20, FY21, and FY22. The projects included are an extension of spending authority for the electronic birth registration system in CDPHE. Pleased to say that under the infrastructure bill that was signed into law in November of 2021, we will now have funding from the federal government for the Colorado School of Mines Subsurface Frontiers building. We also realized a savings on the CSU Shepherdson building renovation and addition. Go Rams. And we also made an investment in the Department of Human Services, SIMHIP, our mental health institution in Pueblo, for emergency suicide mitigation based on an event at the facility this past summer. And we also are providing an increase of cash funds for History Colorado, yet again, to use limited gaming revenue for museum preservation projects. I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us, the passage of House Bill 1184 on second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. House Bill 1184 is passed. Mr. Shewell, please read the title to House Bill 1185.
House Bill 1185 by Representative McCluskey, also Senator Moreno, concerning funding for capital construction information technology and making supplemental appropriations in connection therewith.
Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1185 on second reading.
To the bill.
Members, this is the last of our supplemental appropriations bills. Thank you, Representative Pelton. This is our supplemental appropriations bill on information technology projects. This specifically, in this year, provides an increase in capital construction funding for the replacement of routers and switches at DHS. I encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us, the passage of House Bill 1185 on second reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. House Bill 1185 is passed. Madam Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great work, members. I move that we rise and report.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, the committee will rise and report.
House will come back to order. Mr. Shebo, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole begs leave to report it has under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof and making the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1170, 1171, 1172, 1173, 1174, 1175, 1176, 1177, 1178, 1179, 1180, 1181, 1182, 1183, 1184, 1185, 1186, 1187, 1188, 1189, 1190, 1191, 1192, 1193, 1194, 1195, 1196 as amended, 1197 as amended, passed on second reading, ordered, engrossed, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
That was pretty good, Mr. Shebel. That's pretty good. Representative Exum. Members, you have heard the motion to adopt the report of the Committee of the Whole. There are two amendments at the desk. Whoever would like to go first. Representative Rich. Mr. Shebel, please read the Rich amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
That's 1173, right? Representative Rich moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reserve the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Rich Amendment J001 to House Bill 1173 to show that said amendment passed and that House Bill 1173 as amended passed.
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the Rich Amendment to the Committee of the Whole.
That is a proper motion. It has been moved and displayed. Is there any further discussion on the Rich Amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Rich Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members, please proceed to vote. For those participating remotely, Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Baisley, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Baisley votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hanks votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Ortiz votes no. Representative Burnett, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Burnett votes no. Representative Woodrow, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Woodrow votes no. Please close the machine. With 25 aye votes, 37 no votes, and 3 excused, the Rich Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole is lost. Mr. Shebel, please read the McKean Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative McKean moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reserve the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following McKean Amendment J001 to House Bill 1182 to show that said amendment passed and that House Bill 1182 as amended passed.
Minority Leader McKean.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Folks, don't be fooled. This is an attempt, an ability to move money to help get public safety dollars where they ought to be. This is an amendment that will help your state patrol do its job.
You should probably move it, Mr. Minority Leader.
I should. I move the McKean Amendment of the Committee of the Whole and ask for an aye vote.
That has been properly moved and displayed. Is there further discussion? Representative McCluskey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I urge a no vote. I want to remind you that this supplemental appropriations bill did receive unanimous support from your bipartisan JBC. Please vote no on the amendment.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the McKean Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members, please proceed to vote. For those participating remotely, Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams votes yes. Representative Baisley, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Baisley votes yes. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Hanks votes yes. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Ortiz votes no. Representative Burnett, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Burnett votes no. Representative Woodrow, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Woodrow votes no. Please close the machine. With 24 aye votes, 38 no votes, and 3 excused, the McKean Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole is lost. There are no further amendments at the desk. The question before us is the adoption of the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members, please proceed to vote. For those participating online, Representative Williams, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Williams votes no. Representative Baisley, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Baisley votes no. Representative Hanks, how do you vote?
No.
Representative Hanks votes no. Representative Ortiz, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ortiz votes yes. Representative Burnett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Burnett votes yes. Representative Woodrow, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Woodrow votes yes. Oh. Representative Holtorf and Van Bever. Please close the machine. With 38 aye votes, 24 no votes, and 3 excuse, the report of the committee of the whole is adopted. That brings us to announcements and introductions. Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Judiciary members, real quickly, just because we got through this morning's work rapidly, we will start at the usual time, 1:30, printed calendar agenda, Old State Library, 1:30. Thank you.
Representative Gray.
Hang on. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hey, all, this is Torin. Torin has been here once already. He's going to be here a few more times. He is the child of one of my constituents who wound up in a domestic violence situation and had to leave her home and was homeless for a little while. She's found housing, but hasn't found daycare for the next couple of weeks. So he's going to be here tomorrow and next Wednesday and Thursday hanging out with me. And he's fun, and you should come and say hello to him. But I just wanted you all to get to say hi. Hi, Torin.
Welcome to the chamber. Representative D. Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, tomorrow is Adams State University Day here at the Capitol, and they'll be on the first floor at 7:30 to 9, and hopefully stop by and visit with the board members and grab a burrito. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative D. Valdez. See no further announcements and or introductions. Madam Majority Leader Escar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until later today.
See no objection. The House will stand in recess until later today.